Magandang gabi po mga katipon sa Pilipinas. Ito po ang ating katipunan. Muling sumama sa inyo mga tagapakinig upang magbigay ng mahalagang impormasyon, magbigay liwanag at higit sa lahat makinig sa inyong mga daing at kuro-kuro hinggil sa mga problemang patuloy na nagpapahirap sa ating kalagayan at kabuhayan. Sa susunod na 2 oras, sisikapin po namin paliwanag ang iba-ibang bahagi ng ating ekonomiya at ang mga mabibigat pang local and international issues na may malaking epektos po sa ating buhay at kinabukasan. Ito po ang inyong katipon na si Butch Valdes. Kasama yung pa nating katipon dito, andito po ang ating co-host na si Itos Valdes. At ito po mga kasama natin sa Save the Nation Movement, Philippine LaRouche Society, at ang ating partido politikal na Katipunan ng Demokratikong Pilipino, ang KDP. Kami po ay nag-aanyaya sa inyo na makibahagi sa ating talakayan sa pagsusuri ng mga kasalukuyang problema at paghahanap ng kaukulang solusyon. Okay, ngayong araw po is 4th of July, sabi nga ng mga Amerikano, they call July 4 kasi it is their
commemoration of their
independence
Day.
Kasi po alam niyo po nung panahon na pinaglalaban nilang kasarinlan, nung naitatag ang kanilang estado, it was ang kanilang republika. More accurately, it was in July 4. Remember?
1789 yung Constitution.
Okay, somewhere there.
Yeah. 1789
1789. Pero Declaration of Independence nila was 1776. Dito nagsimula ang kanilang himagsikan laban po sa mga Inglaterra, no? Kanilang colonizer. Dito po sa atin, alam niyo yung ating colonizer, yung mga Kastila, no? At so yung July 4 ang kanilang so today they commemorate that day. Tayo naman po nung for some time in the 1950s all the way up to part of 1960s, no? We were using July 4 as our Independence Day because this was the day that the Philippines and the U.S. signed an agreement where the U.S. granted us independence in July 4, 1946.
Right.
Na.
Right.
So it was granted to us, binigay po sa atin. So pagdating po ng panahon ni Presidente Diosdado Macapagal, no? At nagkaroon po ng pagsusuri at diskusyon na hindi tinuturing independence ang pagbinigay sa iyo, no? Ang sinasabi po ng ating mga mambabatas noon, ito yung ating kasarinlan ng pinaglalaban po natin yan, no? At they go back in history and they identified June 12, 1898,
Yes.
na doon nagdeklara ng soberenya ang ating bansa.
Yeah. As a nation.
As a nation.
As a republic o yung
Yeah.
isa.
Sovereignty as a nation. No? Laban po dati sa mga Kastila, sa Spaniards.
Yeah.
Because we rebelled against this and we went into a war against the Spaniards. No? And in that declaration in Kawit, Cavite, headed by General Emilio Aguinaldo, we declared our sovereignty, or some call it Araw ng Kasarinlan, or the others call it Araw ng Kalayaan. Kalayaan being Freedom Day.
Yeah.
So we shifted our focus on being independent on that day, because even if after that inawakan na naman tayo ng mga Amerikano, inawakan pa tayo ng Hapon, but yung ating talagang declaration ng ating sovereignty was in June 12, 1898.
So,
ang bansang Amerika naman,
July 4.
July 4.
Yun yung commemoration. So, but tama naman, mas apt, di ba, for an independence. But the spirit is still the same. You are declaring yourselves that you will build a new nation based on certain principles and against anything that's empire or colony. Hindi tayo, we are equal as countries. So I think tama naman ang ginawa.
Yes, karapatan po ng isang
independent
lipunan, no? A people, no? It is the right of a people, no? To be sovereign, no? At these sovereign individuals in that society declared themselves into a sovereign nation.
Yeah, organized into a republic.
Dito nagsisimula yung idea that sovereignty resides in the people.
Right.
No?
Right.
And this is where a nation can call itself sovereign, because the people there, in the exercise of their sovereign right,
Their God-given right.
their God-given, get together and form a nation. No? Yun ang ginagawa natin. Now, kung meron mga ibang mga dayuhan na gustong kumupkup sa atin at hindi naman tayo magsusurrender at hindi tayo papayag, no? Lalabanan natin. The occupiers at that time for 300, 400 years were the Spaniards. And all throughout those times, we were always trying to rebel against them.
Yeah.
And sooner or later, of course, our what we call national heroes now, no, finally were getting themselves together and started the revolution against the Spaniards. No?
Right.
While we were fighting them, the Americans came in presupposedly to help us, but eventually also took us in as another colony. We call it colony, but the Americans at that time called it a protectorate. No? Whatever the definition they want is basically the same.
Because it's against their constitution to have colonies.
Colonies, yeah.
So
they called it a
parang
protectorate.
influence. So, but to us, it is another.
Pareho. No?
No, it is another stronger nation ruling.
Imposing itself.
Yeah, ruling, become our rulers. Kumbaga, hindi tayo pwede gumalaw kung hindi natin sila yun. So, whether it's right or wrong. So, and then,
But ang maganda naman dito, yung protector, ang alam ko, dalawa lang kasi itong grupong mga tao na kinupkup ng mga Amerikano as protectorates. One is the Philippines, and we are the only ones in this whole
In
Asia na ginawang ganito. And the other one is, I think, Puerto Rico, which is up to now, no, a protectorate
yes,
state. No?
yes. Both were under Spain at the
Both
time.
were under Spain. Pero yung Puerto Rico up to now. Pero yung Philippines, because we were clamoring all the time sa Amerikano, no, that we were clamoring for independence.
Right.
Pagdating ni Franklin Delano Roosevelt, pinangako niya sa atin, sa ating mga Pilipino noon, ang sabi niya, okay, we will grant you independence by 1946, which is 10 years from the time he committed that. 1936 yon, tapos committed by 1946. Why 10 years? Kasi ang plano, tutulungan niya tayo to be in a
Better state.
condition, to be able to function as an independent nation.
Self-sustaining, parang...
Kasi pag iniwan mong ganyan, baka hindi pa kaya.
Right.
So, sinet up niya pati lahat, mga educational system, pati na yung
Our SSS.
SSS, pati yung infrastructure natin.
National Power Corporation.
Yeah.
All of this.
Tinatayo nila yung mga institusyon na kakailanganan at tinutulungan nila tayo. Yung mga tao niya sa Amerika, pinadala niya dito. Kanya lang, anong nangyari? Nagkagera. Umatake ang mga Hapon sa Pearl Harbor, dala na rin ang atake nila dito sa Clark, tapos nagkagera, napasama ang Amerikano. Kanya medyo na apekto yung plano na pagpapalakas dito sa ating bansa. As a matter of fact, during World War II, binomba tayo ng Amerikano. Yung Manila. Kasi dyan nagtatago yung mga Hapon. No?
And they were massacring people.
Yes. So the Japanese were massacring people. But they had yung style ng Amerikano was...
Yeah, at that time, napag-isipan lang. Kasi Manila, puro buildings yan, di ba? So doon nagtatago sa loob ng mga buildings.
Sa Intramuros.
So sabi ng mga Amerikano, if we're gonna take those back, mas masalimuot if we go door to door. Mahabang usapan yan. So, and the Japanese were holding hostages, a lot of Filipinos, while massacring them. Kasi talo na po yung Hapon eh. So, may natira lang dito mga na soldiers na inutusan ng head ng kanilang army. You stay and delay the advance of the Americans. So doon lang sila sa tapos one of those nga sa UST, sa massacre sa hospital ng UST, grabe. Sa Lasal, sa chapel ng De La Salle University. Ang hirap pasukan yan ng one by one, di ba?
Ito yung matinding laban kasi tatandaan nyo nung pagpasok ng Hapon dito, inatake yung Clark and again. Talo yung Amerikano.
Yeah, right away.
Talo yung Amerikano kasi surprise attack, hindi sila handa, no? Kanya yung fall of Corregidor, no?
Yes.
That was the time. Tapos, that was 3 years na hinawakan tayo ng Hapon.
Yeah, but you remember also, yung plano ng Hapon, because they disabled the fleet in Pearl Harbor, tapos they bombed Clark, which is also the fighter planes of America. Talagang handicap yung hindi maka-respond yung kasi wala, nabomba sila eh.
Nabomba.
So alam nila na hindi sila maka-recover right away.
So atras ang Amerikano. Ang head ng forces at that time dito was General Douglas MacArthur. At dito siya, nung umatras siya, dito niya ipinangako, I shall return. Sabi niya, no? Sabi niya, 3 years after that, he did return with the might of the United States military and devastated, of course, the enemies. No? Of course, maraming storya dyan. Pero, ibig sabihin, talagang ginamit yung puwersa. And those 3 years were very important in the U.S. because they were manufacturing. They were in a position
Because of FDR.
because of FDR, Franklin Roosevelt. They were able to get their factories moving
Yes.
to start producing tanks, airplanes, and so on and so forth. No? Dahil dito sa kanyang pag-aayos ng ekonomiya ng bansa.
Right.
Remember, in 1933, nung pumasok si Franklin Roosevelt, they were in depression.
Great Depression sila.
Great Depression. No?
51%.
51% unemployment, so on and so forth. No? Great Depression silang yan. Tapos tumapasok siya. Habang inaayos niya, pinaano niya yung ekonomiya, biglang naggera. Tuloy ang pag-ayos niya ng kanyang ekonomiya. At by
44?
yes, 42,
42,
no?
yeah.
By 1942, nakabalik siya dito, no? At he devastated the Japanese occupational army. No?
Malala natin also, US was fighting two fronts.
Yes,
Asia and Europe.
in Europe.
Grabe ang ginawa ng US. So, they had to figure out, pero imagine 1942, that's just 1 year after. Tapos,
Ano yan?
oh,
You have to give it to this guy Franklin Roosevelt
Grabe.
because he resuscitated America from
the
ground.
productive power of America.
Great Depression po sila, yung ekonomiya nila.
Mm.
Ang daming nagugutom, yung maraming nagsusuicide, no? Parang naalala ko tayo ngayon
Of course.
Maraming nagugutom, maraming nagsusuicide, no?
It's a good lesson though.
Yes.
Very good lesson.
Doon siya pumasok, inayos niya yung
Inayos
ekonomiya niya into something productive, no? Kasi dati, ang kanyang nagbagsakan sa Amerika, ang kanilang ekonomiya was based on speculation. Etong pagtataya lang sa stock market, no?
In the 20s,
In the
yes.
20s. Now, bumagsak yon, tapos binaligtad niya ang ekonomiya from being a speculative type of economy
Right.
to a productive side of economy. Ito yung umandar ng mga factories niya at saka mga workers.
I wanted to add also, yung America po, you have to look at it, kaya tayo we discuss this and all of it. Maganda po kasi parallel yung ating story. Of course, we're connected to America. Even more than connected to colonial Europe. There are some instances pa rin, but because, lalo na dahil kay Franklin Roosevelt, you have to understand, yung economy, kaya bumagsak, kaya naging speculative tong economy ng America in the 20s. If you move back, the biggest industries were owned by the oligarchs. They were owned by the big names oligarchs. Siguro naririnig natin ngayon. Vanderbilt, Rockefeller, JP Morgan. Sila po, they in effect were the ones running the US economy. They had control over power, food, transport, and communication. Sila lang yun. Sila yung sometimes they're referred to as the railroad robber barons kasi they owned the communications and transport lines around the country. So sila nagdidikta. So there was no SSS. There was no security for employment. There was no 8-hour workdays. Na-establish lang yan after the Great Depression. So sila yung hari. Yan ang sinasabi ni Franklin Roosevelt. And when he got in and reformed, part of his reform was to take out these oligarchs from the U.S. economy and running the government, di ba? That's very important.
Well, one difference is, no, yung oligarko noon, no, yan, they had railways, they were to steel production, they were. But at the same time, they control the economy and they control Wall Street.
Yes.
Wall Street.
They use their
Alam mo
their
yung Wall
might.
Street, we call it gambling, di ba po? So, speculation means gambling.
Yes.
They use the Wall Street to generate the capital so that they can become bigger oligarchs. No?
Yeah.
Ngayon, that was the nature of that oligarchy. Yung nature ng oligarchy po natin dito sa Philippines is a little different. Not a little. It's
It's the same.
there are no industries yet that they control except public utilities. No? Pero papunta na dyan kasi ibibigay na sa kanila itong mga ibang industrial development natin kung hindi natin pipigilin. Kung hindi, kontrolado na ulit ang kanilang ang mga buhay at it becomes susceptible again to depression or crash, no? So, ito pong ginagawa natin ngayon, no, is creating the conditions so that we will not fall into that direction. So that any kind of development natin, no, is development led by government, no, and then participated in by the private sector, participated in, but the leader is government. Baligtad po itong mga ekonomista ni Duterte. Ang gusto nila, walang gobyerno, oligarko lang ang magpapatakbo. Delikado po yan kasi mga oligarko wala pong pakialam sa karapatan at sa kapakanan ng mamamayang Pilipino. They don't care about the view. That's the difference between these oligarchs. That's why government has to be there as leading the growth so that the people's welfare are protected, no? And that this big industrialists can participate directed by the government, no? Yun po ang kakaiba dito sa sinasabi natin na strategy kaysa dito sa strategy ng kasalukuyang gobyerno at pareho na rin yung kanilang ginawa noon. Hindi po nag-iiba ang economic thought, ideas, and strategy ni Dominguez, Benjokno, Carl Chua, dito sa mga nakaraan ni Noynoy Aquino, nakaraan ni Gloria, nakaraan ni Erap at ni hanggang doon sa baba, hanggang doon kay Corazon Aquino.
Yes.
No? Dito po tayo kasi kanya nalugmok po tayo sa paghahawak ng public utilities ng oligarko natin.
Right.
But let's go back. Let's go back dito sa pinag-uusapan natin.
So we go back. So since July 4 yung tema natin in independence, it's not usually what Franklin Roosevelt did when he got in. Siyempre World War II, 'di ba tayo? Pero when he got in, he exercised the sovereign power of the republic against the speculators, against the oligarchs owning industries. Gumawa siya ng rules and he put them in jail. May mga kaso sila. Hindi lang lip service, hindi lang para mamurahin niya yung mga oligarko. He put them in jail, yung JP Morgan. And they tried to overthrow Franklin Roosevelt. Sinubukan pa nila, kumuha sila ng people power. Ang gagawin nila, may plano sila, kukuha sila ng isang leader na sila yung sumusuporta. Sila daw yung suportado ng tao. Tapos overthrow tong si Franklin Roosevelt kasi daw diktador siya.
Let me, before we go, ito pong sinasabi natin mga speculators. Ang tawag natin iba dyan is investors kuno, no? Pero yung speculators, ito yung mga tumataya.
Yes.
Pag speculator ka, gusto sabihin you are speculating, no? How your investment is going to go, no? Maglalagay ka ng pera dito dahil palagay mo kikita ka dito.
Tataas.
Get that, tataas. For example, pag pinagpustahan mo kung sinong mananalo, si Pacquiao o si Errol Spence, no? Tataya ka kay Pacquiao, you are speculating.
Yes.
No? Tataya ka. Ang tawag natin dito, investor yan. No? Okay. Ngayon, palawakin pa natin. Sabihin natin ang peso tsaka ang dollar ay ganito ngayon ang exchange rate. 50-1 ang exchange rate. Tapos may nagbulong sa'yo na ang exchange rate ng peso to $1 ay magiging 60 pesos to $1. So ano pong gagawin ninyo? No? Ang gagawin ninyo, yung peso nyo, bibili kayo ng dollar.
Yep.
Dahil gagamitin mo yung 50 pesos mo, bibili ka ng $1. Bakit? Kasi next week, aakyat yan ng 60 pesos. So, ibebenta mo ngayon ng $1 mo at 60. Kumita ka. Di ba? Yun ang tinatawag na speculation. No? Ngayon, lahat ng mga investors, ngayon, dito na pumapasok sa speculation. Pagdating sa mga kumpanya, tataya ako dito dahil sinabi ng broker ko, aakyat ito. Hindi mo alam kung bakit aakyat, pero sabi ng broker mo, aakyat. So mag-i-invest ka dito sa stock na ito. Magkano? 10,000 pesos. So bakit sinabi? Dahil sabi sa akin, pagdating ng next week, magiging 20,000 yan. So tumataya ka. Ganyan po yung klima ng speculative investment. Ito po yung sinasabi yung panahon ng Amerika noon, itong sinira o kinalaban ni Franklin Roosevelt, natanggalin niyang speculative investments, no? Ay yun ang kanyang sinisira, yung pagsusugal. Kasi yung mga bangko ngayon, may hawak na pera ng mga depositors sa Amerika.
Right.
Anong ginagawa nila? Yung pera ng mga depositors, isinusugal nila sa speculation.
No? Malaki kita.
Malaki kasi ang kita. Pagkatapos, biglang bumagsak.
Yes.
Pati na yung mga depositors sa bangko, walang nakuha. Yung kanilang dineposito, yung inipon nila, nawala.
I'm talking about today? Or?
No, I'm talking about that time in the United States. And so, nagsibagsakan. That's why, nagkaroon ng mga crash. No? Ganyan po yung nangyari. At ito po sinasabi natin, na itong mga oligarko, kasama sila dito sa speculation. Yung kumpanya nila, ilalagay yung mga shares of stock nila, tapos mamanipulahin nila yung mga presyo ng shares of stock para pumasok yung mga tao, ipapasok nila yung pera nila. Pagpasok ng pera nila, mahuhuli sila, dala yung makukuha ngayon ng mga oligarko yung pera nitong mga ito. So palaki ng palaki itong mga oligarko. Ganyan din ang pwedeng gawin dito sa Pilipinas.
Hindi ba ginagawa ngayon?
Ginagawa na rin.
yun eh. So, because that's exactly, now you look at, of course, babalik tayo dun sa July 4th, no? But what we're trying to do is show you what the climate is and why there needs to be a revolution, a move towards taking out and taking back the economy for our country. It's like another revolution that we need to do in the Philippines. So, those, nangyayari, tignan mo yung sino ba may-ari ng electricity? Gobyerno ba? Hindi. Sino ba may-ari ng tubig? Sino ba may-ari ng telecom? Sino ba nagmay-ari ng mga daan, mga skyway, hindi gobyerno.
Diba? Oligarko na po, di ba?
Di ba? Now, if they decide, kung sabihin nila, ayaw ko maglabas ng tubig, pwede mong kasuhan, pwede. Pero hindi gobyerno. Sino ba nagmay-ari ng pera mo? Saan ba tayo nagbabangko? Di ba lahat oligarko? So kung gustong sabihin ng gobyerno, let's go to this policy building factories, building. Sino malalapitan niya? E di yung electricity, yung tubig, yung pagkain. Eh, sino ba nagme-may-ari ng mga yun? Yung oil, energy, right? Oh, that's what we're facing now. Yeah.
Tama yung sinasabi ni Itos. Pero maramdaman nyo po, tandaan nyo po, yung mga oligarko, hindi nila kayang gawin nito sa sarili nila. Kinakailangan kakontsaba nila yung nasa gobyerno. Kinakailangan papayagan sila ng nasa gobyerno na gawin itong klaseng pamamalakad, no? Para merong kikitain at meron din may magbibigay dito sa mga kakontsaba sa gobyerno. Pero ang naghihirap palagi diyan ang taong bayan kasi dahil dito sa kanilang pagkontsaba, tumataas ang singil
Right.
sa kuryente, tubig at telecom. Hirap po tayo, no? Pero sila masaya sila dahil meron silang pagkukuntsaba. The oligarchs and the government, no?
Yeah.
And
But that was the same during
that's the same during those times, Franklin Roosevelt, no?
Nagkakakonsyaba sila.
Ito yung dinismantle at binuwag ni Franklin Roosevelt. Ito ang hinihingi natin kay Duterte na buwagin itong pagkasakal sa atin.
Yes.
Itong sistemang ito na kasama mga oligarko na hanggang ngayon hindi niya ginagawa.
Yeah.
At nagsususpecha ngayon tayo na baka naman meron silang pinag-usapan, no? Baka naman meron silang mga private deals, no?
Right.
Kasi nung panahon po ni Roosevelt, kitang-kita na wala siyang negosyong pinasukan kasama nitong mga mabibigat. Dahil sinira niya no? Sinira niya talaga ang pinagkikitaan nila, no? At dito nangyari yung dito natin makikita kung dito sa Pilipinas magagawa natin yung ginawa ni Roosevelt.
Right. So that's what we should take. Na kayang-kayang gawin na.
Kayang gawin. At alam niyo po si Roosevelt, siya lang ang kauna-unahang presidente ng Amerika na binoto ng tao for 4 terms.
Wala kasing term limits.
4 consecutive terms. Noon kasi walang limit. Pag gusto ka ng tao, iboboto ka nila ulit. No? At tapos dahil doon sa natakot sila na baka magkaroon na naman ng isang sikat na presidenteng ganyan.
Right.
Inayos nila yung kanilang saligang batas para mag-limit ng dalawang
so
term.
8 years maximum.
Bali, 8 years maximum.
Eh tayo, nilimitan na 6 years lang.
6 years.
after the 87
Pero
Constitution.
6 years can be a long time if you're doing something wrong to the people. Because the people have to suffer for 6 years.
Right.
6 years is a lot. No?
Right.
If you're 60 years old, that's 10% of your life. No?
Yeah.
So, mahaba yan. At maraming mamamatay dahil sa kahirapan.
Yeah. But
Ito pong mga kasama ni Duterte, sinasabi ko lang, naalala ko lang. Ito pong sinasabi namin, hindi ganyan mag-isip ang ating mga pamahalaan, hindi ganyan din mag-isip ang ating mga ekonomista sa gobyerno.
Right.
Lalong-lalo na yung mga nakaraan na 4 o 5 administrasyon. No? Parang nakalimutan na nila o wala silang pakialam. Kasi dapat tutukan talaga ang kapakanan ng taong bayan. Hindi itong mga statistika, mga GDP, yung mga ganyan. Walang kinalaman yan sa kapakanan ng taong bayan. Yung gutom, no? Yung kinakailangan niyang trabaho, yung pagsusumikap na magsusikap siya at kikita siya, no? Wala pong kinalaman yun dyan.
Right.
Puro statistika.
Right.
No? So, we have to understand that right now, these changes have to be made. When you say revolution, it's a revolution of the mind. Unang-una yan, revolution of the mind. You have to change the direction of the economy. And in order to do that, you have to dismantle these oligarchs and take out all of those econoquacks, from government, no? Because they're the ones that direct
Right.
the leadership, like Duterte, kung ano yung pupuntahan ng ating bansa.
Right. So going back to July 4 and what we're fighting for, we'd like to. I think we have a video of the Declaration of Independence, just a small video to commemorate, and then from there we can jump off. Roxanne, can we play that video in Declaration of Independence? Okay. Yeah, sige.
1776, and the idea of independence had been growing for a long time. Fed up with British rule, the colonists wanted to have a voice in their own affairs. Several events led to the call for independence, but the first major instance of discontent began with the passage of the Stamp Act in 1765. This act required colonists to pay a tax on all paper goods, including legal documents. This was the first time that a direct tax had been put on American goods. The colonists were not happy, and they made their discontent known. The Stamp Act was repealed, and the colonists were temporarily appeased. This, however, would be short-lived. Determined to collect revenues from the colonists, the British Parliament passed the Townshend Acts in 1767. The Townshend Acts placed a tax on imported items that came into the colonies. These items included glass, lead, and tea. One of the major towns affected was Boston because many ships used the Boston harbor. The colonists were once again infuriated. Tensions grew between the colonists and the British troops who were sent to enforce the Townshend Acts. These confrontations escalated on March 5, 1770. British soldiers shot and killed 5 colonists in an event known as the Boston Massacre. The Townshend Acts were eventually repealed, but once again, a new tax was instituted, this time on tea. To express their anger, colonists dumped over 300 chests of very expensive tea into Boston Harbor. This event is infamously known as the Boston Tea Party. After years of being overtaxed and unrepresented, 12 of the 13 colonies decided to come together for a common purpose: to break free from England. Georgia was the only colony that did not send a delegate. Representatives from the colonies would meet during the First and Second Continental Congress to discuss their options for dealing with Britain. Fighting between the colonists and the British had already begun, and it was time to formally declare independence. In June of 1776, a group of 5 men were called upon to draft a Declaration of Independence from England. Among the authors were Ben Franklin, John Adams, and Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson, who was known to be an eloquent speaker and a strong voice for independence, was the biggest contributor. The document had 5 sections: the introduction, the preamble, the body, which includes the indictment of King George III and the denunciation of the British people, and the conclusion. The introduction establishes that it is the law of nature that allows a people to be independent and says that people must state their grievances before demanding independence. The preamble gives an overview of the colony's philosophy and contains the most notable quote: "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed." These words would go on to be the foundation for American government and values. The body of the Declaration of Independence lists the grievances against the head of the British government, King George III, stating items like, he has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, and for depriving us in many cases of the benefit of trial by jury. In the conclusion, the Declaration of Independence states that the British government has not met the conditions required to create a new government, and the states are free states and able to do all things that an independent country can do. On July 4, 1776, the Declaration of Independence was finalized in Philadelphia at Independence Hall. It was signed by 56 men representing the 12 colonies. With their signatures affixed to the Declaration of Independence, the colonists distributed the document to the world, declaring themselves a free nation. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
So that's just a overview of what it is. Marami pa po. You can find it all online. We have a couple of other videos maybe. But we want to discuss this. So
The document that the video referred to, the Declaration of Independence of 1776, as you saw, that these people got together in a revolutionary condition, no? And declared independence from England, no? Because they did not want to be oppressed and suppressed, basically. Ang sinasabi doon yung taxation and so on and so forth. But I'm sure there were other problems that they had. So this number of states got together. Hindi pa yung buo yan, no? Pero nag-declare sila ng independence and sovereignty. Tapos nakikita nyo po yung wordings noon. All men are created equal.
that's the principle from founding this government.
Yun ang pinaka-prinsipyo. Kasi, sinong kalaban nila?
Yeah.
King George ng England.
Most powerful nation at that time.
Hari siya. Tapos kaya niyang magpataw ng buwis maskisan kasi pag-aari niya lahat ng mga colonies ng Britain.
Right.
Umaangal nga yun itong mga Amerikano, no? Sabi, bakit mo basta-basta papatawang kami ng buwis? Hirap na kami dito, kinukuha mo na lahat, no? Pero wala siyang pakialam kasi wala naman representante ang Amerika doon.
Right.
Tsaka hindi kailangan dahil pag-aari ka ng hari. So,
that's empire.
Okay.
That's
Hari,
monarchy.
king, no?
Monarchy.
Pero pag-establish nitong Republika ng US sa Declaration of Independence, ang sa kanila, all men are created equal. Walang hari-hari.
Yes.
All men are created equal, sabi. So sabihin, at ang tao,
Endowed by their
creator with inalienable rights. Right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that in order to secure these rights,
Right.
in order that manatili at protektahan itong karapatan
na bigay ng
na
Diyos.
ibinigay ng Diyos sa amin, pwede kaming magtatag ng isang gobyerno na yung gobyernong yun susundan ang kagustuhan ng governed.
Based on those principles.
Based on those principles. At doon nakukuha yung power o yung karapatan
Right.
ng ng
The
government galing po sa
governed.
yung mga tao.
Yes.
Siya naglagay diyan. Meron pa doon, hindi na nasabi, na kung hindi gagawin yan,
Yes.
kung hindi nila gagawin ang kagustuhan ng tao, may karapatan at may katungkulan. It is the right and the duty
Right.
of the people to replace that government.
Yep.
Yun ang sinasabi dyan. No? Kaya napaka-importante po yan dokumentong yan. Kasi, bagamat galing po sa bansang Amerika, kung babasahin niyo po, ay isa po siyang what you call universal document. Hindi ko alam kung yan ang kanilang intention noon nung ginawa yan. Pero ang kanilang intention talaga magpahayag ng kasarinlan laban sa Inglaterra.
Right.
Tapos, dahil dito, parang ginaya na ng mga ibang mga lipunan, no?
Through the years.
Itong concept of a People's Republic.
Yeah.
No?
Of, by, for the people.
Of the people, for the people, and by the people. In order to set. Kasi nawala na yung konsepto dapat ng mga hari, ng mga reyna na nag-aari sa kanila. So the people now can establish themselves into a sovereign state. All countries follow that suit.
Yeah.
No? Yun.
So, the other thing with that Declaration of Independence, that was the intention. Kasi may mga iba. Siyempre, before they wrote the declaration, itong mga representatives ng kanilang states, they're not known as Americans. There's no such thing as Americans. You are known as colonists. You are colonists from the Americas na yun ang pangalan na binigay ng Britain. Oh, those are the Americas. Pero kayo, representing kayo ng Washington, ito yung state mo, ito para kayong probinsya ng Britain. Okay? So, no such thing as we're not Americans. We're subjects of the Queen, subjects of the King. So they wrote and said, these United States are free and independent. And these United States of America came later on. Pero these United States, 13 lang pong colonies. Kita mo, nasa East Coast lahat. Kasi wala pang kasama yung West Coast. Hindi pa kasama sa Amerika yon. Later on through the years when the Republic was established and then through Lincoln and all. But the concept was not for all men are created equal. When they wrote that, may mga debate. Kasi sabi ng mga ibang congressmen at the time, or not congressmen, representatives of those states, and mga lawyers na sabi nila, why all men? Dapat Americans lang, tayo lang. Pero may nag-insist. Kasama na yan si Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, tsaka si John Adams, yung leaders of this independence movement. Sabi nila, the establishment of any republic should represent all mankind. Cannot just represent one people. Or else it has to be all-encompassing. That they understand, galing po sa isang filosofiya yan, na all men are endowed by their Creator by inalienable rights. Meaning, lahat ng tao sa mundo, kahit kailan na panganak, may soberenya. They have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You should be free. You should be alive. You have the right to life. Nobody can take your life away. Kung ayaw mo. And then the pursuit of happiness, the way you see fit, to live out your dreams, to work, that is the establishment of that government. So ngayon, you had that philosophy na hindi po nag-i-exist in any government before this time. Wala pong Republican representative government at that time. When they established that and that declaration, yung Declaration of Independence nga yung ginamit rin natin eh. we hindi copy paste, but there are the concept that God gave citizens of this country, not because you're of your color or your blood, but it's a philosophy.
Yeah.
Kaya yung sa Amerika,
Yeah.
you don't go there just because you're white or black, or it has nothing to do with race. It has everything to do with your philosophy. If you subscribe to this, you can be an American citizen. Ganon yung sulat na. Sige.
Right. Yeah. No, you were just say si kanina. That's correct. No.
Yeah.
That it is a kind of thinking. No. I was just about to say that what that Declaration of Independence became the basis or became like a template.
Yes.
No. Of all subsequent republics that were set up.
Yeah.
All subsequent. Makikita niyo po halos lahat ng mga republika ng iba-ibang bansa kaysa sa Europa o dito sa may Americas o dito, maski dito.
Europe, Asia.
Basahin niyo yung kanilang preamble. Marami. Yung mga republika po, no? Basahin niyo yung mga preamble nilang. Alam niyo yung preamble, yung parang prinsipyo na
Where the Constitution
base ng
follows.
kanilang saligang batas. No? Parang ginagaya at reiterating the same principles that the Declaration of Independence had set up.
Right.
And you look at ours, I'm a little disappointed because it is a poor copy. Parang hindi nila nakuha yung essence ng prinsipyo ng Declaration of Independence. And yet, ginagaya nila. Ginagaya lang yung
This
words.
is 87.
Right.
This is 87.
Ginagaya lang yung words.
Right.
Pero yung spirit,
Wala.
sa akin pong palagay, nung nakita ko,
Yes.
it misses the whole point.
Right.
Pero doon nila, kasi ang preamble, kala nila, ano lang yan, intro.
Yes.
Intro lang. No?
That's what.
Pero sa atin po, dapat yun ang pinaka-importante. Kasi doon nakabase ang ating pinaniniwalaan bilang isang bansa na may kasarinlan. No? So, I also wanted to add, I stumbled into it almost accidentally. No? That the Declaration of Independence, looking at different countries, when I looked at Vietnam, you know po, Vietnam Constitution was made by a guy named Ho Chi Minh and General Giap.
Yeah.
Yung mga head ng mga puwersa noon na nagpatalsik sa Amerikano at nagpatalsik sa mga Frances na French at first and then Americans after. They kicked them out of Vietnam and they defeated the Americans actually. But soon enough, they established themselves into a republic. And meron silang constitution. Alam niyo po, I encourage you, look into the Constitution of Vietnam. You will see that the preamble of their constitution is almost like a carbon copy of the U.S. Declaration of Independence. Nakakagulat po, di ba? Sabi nila, komunista, lahat-lahat. Pero tignan niyo po yung kanila. At bakit kaya? Kasi etong si Ho Chi Minh, na pinagpupumilit nilang komunista at masamang tao at lahat-lahat. Alam niyo po sa kanyang mga memoirs, ang sinasabi niya, among the greatest human beings that lived during this whole how many centuries was a guy named Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
Ho Chi Minh is saying that. So you can see Abraham Lincoln, and you can also see the Declaration of Independence as having an impact on the mind of a person that established Vietnam, who in all of his life basically, most of his lifetime, fought against oppression, no? Suppression, and colonization for the independence of Vietnam. And so, yan po ang gusto ko
But
lang
yeah,
idagdag.
but also look at sino yung General Chiang Kai-shek? Chiang Kai-shek, when he was trying to reestablish after World War II, trying to create a republican government, democracy. Ganon rin yung constitution. Same with us, same with a lot India, same with South American countries.
Yeah.
Even in Europe, parang nakita nila, magandang basehan to justify a new government for, by, and of the people. It's a very nice and correct principle to establish a new form of government. Kasi po, malala po natin, in Europe at that time, puro colonial powers. Ito yung mga monarchy, India, Britain. Tayo lang sa Pilipinas, nahulog tayo sa Amerikano in 1900, di ba? 1898, 1899. After one colony, biglang meron na namang, may boss na naman tayo. So we couldn't get our act together. And even Aguinaldo is turning out to be, kasi marami na lumalabas about Aguinaldo, he really didn't want independence ng lumalabas, because he was willing to work with whoever was the power at the time, which was sad. But it shows you how difficult it is to establish it. Pwede mag-declaration, pero ang success ng Amerika, ang success ng kanilang republic, which is the United States, is a republic, is that they were able to build a country based on these principles. The most successful, I would say. From nothing, not a power, to becoming the most powerful nation on earth. And you have a sabi nga ni Benjamin Franklin, di ba, chairman, sabi niya, okay, so now we're independent. Nanalo na tayo sa Britain. Here's your republic if you can keep it.
The story is supposed to be when there was a lady that met with right after this whole establishment of the Constitution, and he says, Mr. Franklin, what have we done? He says, well, you have a republic if you can keep it. No. Well, what he meant there is that was not the end, and you have to keep on fighting for your sovereignty, keep on fighting for your freedom, no? And continuously. No?
Yeah.
Hindi yung you just establish once and that's it. No?
Right.
It's a continuous fighting for your freedom.
Right.
Because it is your right. No?
Yes, it's how you're, and we go back. Sige.
And there will be more people,
Yes.
other countries, will try to subvert you.
Yes.
No?
Yes.
And try to push you down, and you will have to fight it out.
It's a continuing.
Nakikita niyo po, ang pinaglalaban nating kasarinlan, sovereignty, there are two ways that you can be attacked. Our sovereignty can be attacked from an occupational force, from outside,
Right.
and they will take over the country. But our sovereignty can also be attacked from inside. The inside is more insidious kasi hindi mo nahalata, ninanakaw na pala yung bansa mo. Ngayon, yan ang nangyayari na ginagawa sa atin ng mga oligarko at ang kanilang mga kakuntsaba sa gobyerno.
Yeah. So going back to how America was able to do it, hindi po lahat ng Americans, and we know this obviously because our experience with America, hindi po lahat. So na-establish na po nila July 4, 1776, na-establish na po nila ang kanilang nation, and they had to fight a war for independence on this. They fought the British. They defeated the strongest army in the world with the help of other countries, French and other countries, and then they went they established their constitution. The constitution was to have elections, and first president ng United States was, of course, George Washington, because he was the general that was led and hired by the representatives to lead an army. So they won, and so forth. So they began the task with Alexander Hamilton of trying to build a nation, which is not easy. It's trying to lay the proper foundations. Pero throughout po yung history ng United States, may mga magagaling na presidente talaga. May mga masamang presidente talaga. And there are others who in between. So, kung nakita po natin sa buong kasaysayan ng United States, yung United States as a country, hindi po yung mga colonies before that, you will see that and we were discussing this over lunch with Chairman, yung how many presidents, di ba, in the United States were assassinated, how many were attempted assassinations. And if you look through the history, a lot of why would someone want to kill presidents of the United States? Who is their what they call the ancient enemy of the United States, and what do they represent? And you can make a connection, you can make a case that it has, from the beginning, it has come from the enemies of the state na sinasabi ni Chairman, within and without, working within people within their own government, businessmen, politicians, academicians, to bring down certain policies, to bring down certain presidents that had certain policies that benefited the people and not their own interests. So throughout the history of the US, meron mga magagaling, meron mga hindi. And we can go talk about FDR and Truman. And that's an example.
Yung mga hindi, sinasabi natin hindi magagaling. Yung mga magagaling, pinapatay.
Yeah.
Si John F. Kennedy, no? Pinapatay. Pero hindi lang porque magaling. Ano pa yung galing?
Yes.
Ang galing na sinasabi natin po, na-identify nitong mga presidenting to kung sinong kalaban ng Amerika. Ang kalaban ng Amerika, itong mga tinatawag natin ngayon, hindi nila ginagamit ang word noon, pero ngayon tinatawag natin deep state.
Yep.
Kasi po, ang interes na pinansyal, mga bangko, negosyo, no? Politikal, tsaka lahat ito, yung pagkokontrol ng isang grupong mga tao, no? Na pag gusto nilang i-control ang isang bansa, no? Ginagamit nila itong mga kakayanan nila. Pati na yung mga tao dito sa loob ng bansa mo. They corrupt them, no? Madali naman yan, hindi ba? Pero sa Amerika, malawak. Nakita niyo itong nangyari recently kay Donald Trump, no? Hanggang dito sa election nila, talagang babaligtarin nila. Wala silang pakialam kung Amerika yan.
Yeah.
Babaligtarin nila ang resulta ng kasi hawak nila yung media. Hawak nila ang Wall Street. Hawak nila yung mga bankero, tsaka yung mga malalaking negosyo. Hawak nila yung mga ibang international banks. No? It is a group of people na sinasabi natin deep state. At minsan may suspicion pa tayo na pati ang Pangulo natin na i-influence na dyan. No?
Yep.
Bakit? Kasi ang gusto nito mga ito talagang hawakan ng buong mundo. At kung makakayanin nilang wasakin ng Amerika, tingnan nyo yung Declaration ng Amerika, no? Iyan kanilang Declaration of Independence ang talagang kalaban ng deep state.
Right. The principles.
Yung prinsipyo dyan ay kalaban ng deep state. Kanya gusto nilang buwagin yung umahawak dito sa free world. Ang tawag natin the free world. The leader of the free world is America. Why? Because that is the way they have been set up. Their Declaration of Independence, the wars they had fought, and the principles that some of their leaders, the good leaders, have fought for and have died for. No? Some of these leaders that we say are not good have actually, the reason they're not good because they prostituted themselves. They gave up. They gave their country to the control of the deep state. They gave up their lives of their people to the control of Wall Street and the financial institutions, what we call financial oligarchy. No? Yung mga tinatawag nating military-industrial complex.
Eisenhower warned about.
Eisenhower and John F. Kennedy warned about. No?
He warned John F. Kennedy.
Yeah, and John F. Kennedy actually iterated it in his speech.
Yes.
No, he was saying that there are these people, no, insidious people that are going to do this, and those are the enemies, no? And they are now much more powerful because there are once they killed John F. Kennedy. They got a weaker president, and they intimidated these presidents to follow them.
Parang
So,
ngayon.
So tuloy-tuloy, no? Pati na yung paghawak sa mga ekonomiya, pati na yung patakaran pang ekonomiya, sinira nila yung patakaran pang ekonomiya na inumpisahan ni Franklin Roosevelt, sinira nila yon at pinasok nila itong floating exchange rate system na ang may poder dyan, yung mga foreign banks, they destroyed it. No? And why? Because they are an empire. And if you go against them, they will kill you, even if you are the president of the United States. And the only country that probably has this number of people being killed by the oligarchy, no? This number of presidents is the United States.
Yes.
You know? Why? Because of the principles by which that country has been established.
I wanted to also reiterate, in our experience with FDR, in our experience with America, just to illustrate the point po, what a good president is and what not so good. In our experience, Philippine experience, we were a protectorate. We became a protectorate. The president was William McKinley.
Yeah, 1901.
And then William McKinley po, 1901, was assassinated. Okay? Ang later on, ang who took power was Teddy Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt. I think a cousin.
Pinsan
ni
Franklin Roosevelt.
We were under Teddy Roosevelt's kinds of policies from 1902 onwards. Okay, up until Franklin Roosevelt po, 1933. And only in 1933, where he said, we have to give the Philippines independence in 1946. Huwag na natin hawakan yan. But we will set them up for independence. Right? And when that happened, hindi na there was a lot of arrangements and deals struck with the United States to help us develop our in our own way, our sovereign way, but the basic infrastructure and all was set up by the United States. Now, this is not common in colonies. Hindi po to regular kung monarchy ka or may colony ka, hindi mo po sineset up for independence yung pag-aari mo. Bakit? Kasi gusto mong kunin ng yaman nila. It turns out, 1945, namatay po si Franklin Roosevelt. Ang naging presidente, si Harry Truman, towards the end of the war. And when they took over, biglang biglang bumaliktad lahat ng agreement natin with Franklin Roosevelt, lahat ng agreements natin with the other countries, lahat ng gusto natin na mangyari with the veterans and all of that.
Ganito yung kasi kanya bumaliktad. Kasi nga, we were going to be granted independence. Pero isa pang may pinangako sa atin si Franklin Roosevelt. Kayong mga sundaluhan na Pilipino na lumaban sa mga Hapon, katabi ng mga Amerikano, no? Dahil sakop kayo ng Amerika, ay mabibigyan ng veterans pay. Dito sa mga taon na that you had spent, no, fighting the enemy of the United States. Kasi it was not just an enemy of the Philippines. Japan was an enemy of the United States. That is why there was a war. Tayo, protectorate tayo ng Amerika, kanya nasangkot tayo dito sa labanan na ito. Kasi pinapaglaban din natin yung ating lupa, di ba? At pinangako ni Roosevelt, bibigyan namin kayo ng veterans pay katulad pa rin, pareho ng veterans pay ng mga Amerikanong sundalo. Namatay si Roosevelt. Pasok si Truman. Ito na tayo, 1946. Humihingi tayo ng sabi ito,
Veterans.
Hindi, independent na kami. Ito yung pangako ni Roosevelt sa amin. Sabi ni Truman, tayo muna, bakit kayo hihingi ng kung mag-i-independent kayo, bakit pa kayo hihingi ng veterans pay? No? Nag-a-argue ganyan. Siyempre, ang ating paninindigan, kasi pinaglaban namin kasama ng Amerika dati. No? Yung independence, pang
after.
Pero ang sabi ni Truman, kanya hindi mahusay na tao yung gagong yan. Sabi ni Truman, kung gusto niyo yung veterans pay, huwag kayong humingi ng independence. Ngayon, kung gihingi kayo ng independence, hindi kayo bibigyan ng veterans pay. Kasi independent na kayo No? Yun ang sabi ni Truman. Kanya, hanggang ngayon, namatay na yung mga sundalong humingi ng veterans pay natin. Namatay na yung mga anak nila. Meron pa rin mga iba hindi nakakakuha ng bayad ng Amerikano sa kanila. No? Gusto ko lang ipakita kasi hindi lahat ng Amerikano ay mahusay sa pag-iisip.
No, kaya nga, that's the illustration na parang in a republic, hindi always magagaling yung mga presidente. Pero hindi rin ibig sabihin yung bansa, yung buong bansa masama o mabuti. It has to be a president. Parang tayo dito, we have good presidents, we have not so good presidents. But the good presidents, good sinasabi natin, is they follow that principle. They stay true.
We have good presidents.
President. A good president stays true to that principle. We're talking about the U.S. Yung good presidents po na our definition for us is a good president stays true to the spirit of the Declaration of Independence, saying all men are created equal and therefore have all rights. So they will not suppress those rights. They will fight alongside with us to be able to enhance the general welfare of our populations. They will say, you should be strong like we are strong. And wala tayong regime change, wala tayong ganyan. Yan ang magaling na presidente. Because he is staying true to those principles. And just the Veterans Affairs, siyempre masakit sa atin yun kasi we fought alongside. And Roosevelt, for sure, would have given that without question. And namatay siya. Tapos bumaliktad, nandun si Truman, bumaliktad lahat ng deals, not just the veterans issue, but biglang sabi niya, sige, gusto niyo ng independence, palitan natin tong trade deal na to. Di ba? Yung trade deal natin. So, kailangan kami preference. So, nag-iba. Parang nag-iba yung boss nyo sa opisina. Naging swapang, naging ganyan. So, there are times na ganyan. And from that time on, the next good president from 46 onwards was President Kennedy.
Yeah. Gusto ko lang sabihin, itong mga, yung ginawa ni Truman at pinasok itong mga parang agreements na ginagawa ang Amerika na
Preferential
trade partner ang Amerika. Gusto sabihin, pag meron tayong binibentahan at nagbebenta tayong asukar, for example, kinakailangan, pag sila din ang gustong bumili, kailangan sa Amerika mo ibenta. No? Yung mga ganyan. Preferential. Kung gusto nila, may first priority sila. Palaging ganyan.
May condition.
Yung ganyang klaseng agreement, in effect, sila pa rin ang nagmamando sa ating ekonomiya.
Right.
Hindi tayo totoong malaya.
Hindi free market. Hindi ganyan. So, that's the kind. So, sinasabi po natin, yes, independent, a republic, if you can keep it. Same with us. We did, natatawa kami kanina because sino bang magaling na presidente natin we have ever had?
Sabi mo kasi, we have good presidents and bad presidents. I said, good presidents.
Sino yung good, in and out. So you had, we go back to our history. You have Carlos Garcia, you have some, and Quirino was good. So we had those things, and we had those presidents, times in our history na medyo tama yung ginagawa for our country. So, and would fight for our country and our people, not just lip service. Hindi lang yung parang, gusto niya yung tao para sa tao siya, pero pinapaborin niya yung oligarko na luging-lugi yung taong bayan. So those kinds of presidents throughout history. So we wanted to, the conclusion parang of this is that when the U.S., which we're commemorating po now, July 4th, 1776, they're commemorating the independence. The world po changed when the United States, yung 13 colonies, the history of the world changed when the United States colonies, 13, declared independence from Britain. Nagpalit mo yung ano ng mundo, ng world, because suddenly you had the birth of the United States of America as a government of, by, and for the people, unheard of at that time in history, and they built it up to what it is today. Now, in their history, may good and bad, but they were able to build it up using those principles. In fact, President Roosevelt, when he took over, he used that principle as saying, wala dapat tayong colony. Pero yung pinsan niya na si Theodore Roosevelt, parang gusto niya masama sa mga hari at reyna sa Britain. Sabi niya, pareho tayo. So gusto niya may colony rin. Pero si Roosevelt, sabi niya, hindi, kailangan bitawan natin yan. But you give them the means to be independent. Bigyan niyo sila. Let them, and they will flourish.
Gusto ko lang idagdag.
Yeah.
Alam niyo ba yung Balanggiga Massacre?
Yung bell.
Yung Balanggiga Massacre? Si Teddy Roosevelt yun.
Yeah, tama.
Teddy Roosevelt ang namumuno nung nangyari yan. No? Siya, in effect, wala tayong dokumento na ganito. Pero marahil, siya ang nagbigay ng order, sige, patayin niyo lahat yan. No? Yung pinatay nila po, hindi lang isang kapapuranggot na barangay.
Right.
Ang pinatay nila mga 40,000 people in that whole island. No? Para daw walang makakawala. Tsaka bata, babae, at
Lahat. Men, women,
matanda,
children.
at men, women, and children.
Mm.
No? Yan yung Teddy Roosevelt. Sabay talaga yung mga yan. no?
Yeah, so you have McKinley who was assassinated and then paved the way for Teddy Roosevelt to come in. So iba yung policies. Iba yung ganyan. Yung ibang presidente gusto speculation. Si Franklin Roosevelt, tinanggal niya yung mga speculators sa government. Yung iba gusto speculation. In fact, si Bill Clinton nga, di ba, repealed Glass-Steagall. 1998? Was it 1998 that he repealed Glass-Steagall? But he repealed Glass-Steagall.
Ano yun?
Si Clinton. So, di ba?
Yeah,
So,
binalik niya, tinanggal niya.
tinanggal niya, repeal.
Tinanggal niya yung protection
Hmm.
ng mga mamayan sa Amerika.
Right.
Tinanggal niya yung protection na yon sa mga speculators tsaka yung mga gumagawa ng masasama sa stock market.
Hmm.
So, yan si Bill Clinton.
That was established in Franklin Roosevelt's time.
Right.
Glass-Steagall, because para hindi mahawa yung speculative money ng mga private businesses, yung mga oligarko sa ordinaryong mamamayan. So may sinasabi nilang
Yung yung mga dinideposito ng tao sa bangko,
Right.
ha?
Yeah.
Ang nangyari noon, ginagamit ng bangko pangtaya sa stock market.
kung saan man.
Wala naman pahintulot ito. Pag natalo, pati yung mga depositors, wala. Patay sila.
Right.
So nagkaroon ng Glass-Steagall Act na panahon ni Roosevelt na sinasabi, eto mga depositors money, no? Wag niyong ilalaruin.
Hindi nyo pwede ihalo.
Hindi nyo pwedeng ilaro yan sa stock market. Wala kayong pahintulot dyan. Criminal yan.
Yeah.
Yun ang naging
Right.
isa sa mga patakaran sa Glass-Steagall.
Right. And then you had to establish that you're an investment bank or you're a commercial bank.
Magtatayo ka investment bank, sasabihin mo, okay, etong bangkong to, etong gagawin. Maglagay kang pera dito, lalaruin namin.
Yeah. So alam mo.
Alam mo, yun ang mangyayari. Pero yung mga iniipon nila kada buwan, nagtatabi sila ng pera, tapos lalaruin mo, tapos madulugi at mawawala ka, patay. Patay yung mga...
Ang tanong dito sa Pilipinas, may ano ba tayo? Glass-Steagall Style Act.
I don't think so.
No, we don't. We don't.
Walang protection.
Walang proteksyon ang mga deposito nyo, and you are a universal bank. Nung tinanggal yung Glass-Steagall ni Bill Clinton, biglang may mga universal banks ulit.
Yung universal banks, gusto sabihin, pwede maglaro kung saan-saan speculation. Ano pong nangyayari sa atin? Let's say, bumagsak ang isang
Sige,
bangko.
Rox.
At may deposito ka ng 1 milyon dito sa bangko na bumagsak. Makukuha mo ba yung 1 milyon? Hindi.
Hindi.
No? Ang makukuha mo, magkano? Sa akin pong dati, hindi ko alam kung nagbago na. Dati,
PDIC?
ang makukuha mo 100,000 pesos. No?
Ngayon tinaas na nila, I think about 300 if
300.
you're insured, kumbaga, Philippine Deposit Insurance. Pero that does not solve this.
Pero wala yun eh. No?
Wala yun.
Kasi, I don't know, it's 300,000. How much ang deposits? Hindi ko na alam.
Hindi alam. Yeah.
Siguro, mas gaano kalaki yung
Right.
deposito mo, 300,000 lang
300,000
makukuha mo.
That's the maximum.
Yun daw ang protection mo. Ano ba naman yan? No? Pero pwede nilang laruin yung pera nyo.
Yes.
Di nyo ba nakikita ngayon mga bangko? Pag linagay mo yung pera mo sa bangko, ewan ko kung paano nangyari to. Ikaw pa yung nagbabayad sa kanila.
Yes.
Itago ang pera mo.
Right.
Dati hindi ganyan. Pag linagay mo yung pera mo sa bangko, it earns at least 6% per annum. Dati. Bakit ganyan? Kasi, pag naglagay ka ng pera sa bangko, utang nila yon sa'yo. Kasi parang pinahiram mo sila, nung naglagay ka ng 10,000 dyan sa bangko nila, parang pinautang mo sila para magamit nila at papautang yan sa ibang tao na mas mataas na interest. Tapos sila babayaran kan 6%, sila naman papautang nila ng 10 o 10%, kikita sila ng 4%. Ganyan po yung dating patakaran. Ngayon iba na. Maglagay ka ng 10,000 sa bangko, pagkatapos ikaw pa magbabayad ng interest. Walang interest na kikitain yon. Ikaw pang magbabayad sa kanila na banking fees for keeping your money. Mga mandurugas talaga yung mga yan.
Pero now and then, they're going to pass 100, they've already passed 100% ownership of banks. So, there's no protection. Your
Ano
money...
yung Republic Act na yun, Naber?
Sige, research. But that Republic was passed last year?
No. That was passed during Noy Noy's time.
Oh, Noy Noy's time. Another legacy of Noy Noy. 100% ownership ng mga bangko natin pwede na sa Ford. Wala kang laban. Wala po tayong laban. Wala tayong... Sana may Franklin Roosevelt tayo pero wala.
Hindi, ito mga to, wala. Sabi ko, I don't know. Sigurado ako dito kay Duterte halos wala siyang pakialam din sa mga ganyan.
Yeah.
He does not worry about those things. He does not want to think about those things. But I don't know who can right now. All of the senators and congressmen that we have seem to be how do you say it, cowed into just allowing all of these things to happen. Because anyway, every senator, I think, is now receiving close to 300 million pesos pork barrel, no? And then every congressman is receiving 100 million pesos pork barrel per year. So anong pakialam nila dito sa mga ito? No? Anong Republic Act yun? Yan, Republic Act 10641. An act allowing the full entry of foreign banks in the Philippines, amending for the purpose of Republic Act 7721. No? That was passed in July 15, 2014. No? Yan pong batas na yan. Naaalala ko yan. Galit na galit ako. Kasi, imagine, tingnan nyo kung gaano ka-importante yung batas na yan. Allowing foreign banks to enter into our, then to operate here. Ang gusto sabihin, pag naglagay ka ng bangko, yung pera ng mamamayan, kaya nilang higupin. Yung assets ng bansa mo, no, kaya nilang kunin. Pag nagpahiram sa'yo, hindi sila makabayad, kukunin nila yung bahay at lupa mo. Tapos as a Unibank, kaya nilang kunin lahat yan.
Right.
No?
Put you in jail pa.
Tingnan nyo yung implication na yan. Napaka-importante, hindi po ba? Alam nyo ba, pumasa yan sa lower house. Sino bang
Di ba si
speaker
Salceda?
noon? Hindi si Salceda, pero alam ko si Salceda ang isa sa mga tumulak niyan. Bumasa sa lower house, walang debate. 1 week nung itinulak yan, 1 week pasado, pinapunta dito sa Senado. Pagdating sa Senado, 1 week pasado, pinapunta na sa Malacanang at pinirmahan na ni Noynoy batas. Walang nakakaalam. Hindi umabot sa media, walang. Pero kita nyo po, may batas. At gagamitin itong batas na yan sa darating na panahon. Pag itatimingan nila, no? Pag ready na sila talagang sakupin ang buong bansa. Ang pamamaraan pagsakop mo sa isang ekonomiya ng bansa ay through the banking system.
Control the money.
You control the money, then you can control the assets.
Control people.
Tapos, ang pwede nilang gawin, yung mga assets na kukunin nila, kasi pwede silang bumili ng mina, pwede silang bumili ng, yan, meron na korporasyon na gusto ni Joey Salceda. Pagbili nila yan, mga assets yan. What they can do is securitize these assets. They can make this into, what you call, pag sinabing securitize, pwede mong gawin na, ano ito?
Laro.
Panglaro
Sa stock market.
sa stock market ng Amerika. Gusto sabihin, pag binebenta mo na yung mga certificates niyan, tsaka yung mga bonds related to it or stocks related to it, what happens? Dayuhan ng may-ari sa'yo, hindi mo pa alam.
Malay mo, ngayon pa lang, mayroon na.
Yan.
But you also, the other day also, and Chairman will correct me if I'm, with that, you don't even have to declare it because yung mga bangko dito own a lot of assets. These banks, our banks, own a lot of businesses. They own a lot of, they have investments in many of our industries.
Yeah.
So, all a foreign bank has to do is buy controlling shares of the bank and own that asset.
Exactly, that's what they do.
Diba? So they
can do it.
They can do it. Now, pwede ng lahat. Sabihin lang nila, sige, BDO. Ano bang may-ari ng BDO? Ilang businesses ng BDO. Papahiram sila ng pera. They own it.
Yung mga nagtulak nito, hindi ba mga traidor yan? Yung mga patago na nagpasa nito, buong Senado, ni Drilon yata yun o si...
Yeah, probably Drilon.
Drilon o si...
2016,
yung buong Congress, no?
Yep.
Sino ba ang speaker noon? Tinapawa.
Or the Committee on Banking, di ba? Sila.
Well, no, kailangan yung speaker kasi they will pass it as a law.
Yeah.
All of them, no? Aren't they traitors to the Republic? Should they not be hanged or shot by firing squad?
For treason.
Mga traidor Traidor sa bayan.
Right.
Patago nilang itinulak. I was telling people about it. No? I didn't get enough reaction. Yan ang nakakalungkot sa atin kuminsan. Ang mga iba, sobra na ang pagkabobo, hindi na sila makaisip ng tama. No? At sobra ng takot, ayaw na nilang ipaglaban ang karapatan ng mamamayang Pilipino. We have lost the idea of patriotism, no?
Yeah.
And we have lost the capability of revolt. No? We are in a revolutionary situation. It's very sad, but more tragic is the fact that we are not capable of revolting because of fear, because of ignorance, and so hindi makagalaw. No? Yeah. And that meanwhile, we are deteriorating and to the point of disintegration as a nation. I remember there was a prediction that whole nations will disappear. No? And natatakot ako, sabi ko, baka ganyan na mangyari sa Pilipinas. Kasi alam mo, dito sa atin, ang daming nagbebenta ng Pilipinas. Yung mga namumuno sa atin, binebenta na tayo. Yung mga iba dyan, hindi pa namumuno, gusto na tayong isalang sa gera. Labanan ng China. Yung mga ganyan. No? Walang pakialam sa buhay ng mga mamamayang Pilipino. It is scary if that is the direction we will go to.
Yeah.
I hope one day our people wake up. I hope one day we have a leader that will have the
quality,
intellectual competence and the moral courage to do what is right for our country,
To save the nation.
to save the nation.
Yeah.
Ngayon, nawawala na po yan. Nakikita po natin. Napakalungkot.
Yeah.
Dito lang sa debate nangyari, nagsabi lang yung isang senador, laganap ang korupsyon, napikon ng presidente at siniraan na siya kung ano-anong ginagawa sa kanya. Sinasabi na sinungaling. Bakit? Ang presidente lang ba ang may alam na walang na laganap ang korupsyon dito? Ang presidente lang ang walang alam niyan? Ilang beses siya nagsasabi. Hindi na niya kaya ang level ng korupsyon sa bansa natin. Not once, not twice. She keeps on talking about the corruption. He says, I have seen the enemy. And it is us. Sabi niya. What was he referring to? Corruption. When he saw this thing about the oligarchs in water, silang Pangilinan,
Electricity, water.
ano yung sinabi niya? This is the mother of all corruption. Sabi niya. Yan mga customs, yung mga baliwala lang yan. No? Tapos sinabi ni Senator Pacquiao, maraming corruption.
Nagalit siya.
Ininsulto na siyang todo-todo.
Yep.
He's a bully. He is a president of the country. And to say these words to a senator who was only telling the truth.
Correct.
And he kept on saying, I just want to help the president because I am getting all of this information and I want to turn it over to him because he is the executive branch.
Right.
We are only in the Senate. We are a legislative body. Gumagawa lang po kami ng batas. Hindi kami investigador. Ang investigador dito, kayo po. Kayo, Mr. President. Responsibilidad mo to. Tutulungan ka namin. Ito yung mga dokumento. Ipahanap mo dito sa mga magagaling mong investigador. Bakit mo titirahin yung para mo siyang alam nyo, hindi ko alam kung anong plano ni Pacquiao kasi presidente. Pero dito sa ginagawa ng presidente kay Pacquiao, ang number one campaigner for Pacquiao is the president.
Because of what he's doing.
Because of what he's doing to Pacquiao. Kasi tayo, kampi tayo sa dehado. Lalo na kung dehado na nagsasabi ng totoo. Tapos gagamitin mo ng puwersa ng Malacanang, ng puwersa ng iyong posisyon ng presidente. Gagamitin mo, sasabihin mo, sinungaling siya. Sasabihin mo sa taong bayan, huwag siyang iboto. Ikaw na ang campaign manager talaga ni Pacquiao. Hindi mo ba nakikita yan? Kaya nakakaano eh. Again, may nagtanong sa akin, it's out of the topic, but dito sa pinapaliwanag ko sa ibang tao noon. Ito si Duterte. Pag ganyan ng ugali niya, bully siya, gusto niyang tatakutin yung tao. Kasi ganyan ang kanyang sistema. Nung bago siyang naging presidente, hindi pa siya nanunumpa. Sinasabi na niya, kayong mga gumagamit ng droga, I hate drugs, sabi niya. Hate ko no. I hate drugs, sabi niya. When kayong mga gumagamit, kayong nagtutulak, kayong mga drug dealer, kailangan mag-surrender na kayo kasi papatayin ko kayo. papatayin ko kayo, kukulong ko kayo. So, lahat ng mga pamilya natakot. Yung mga nanay, mga ama, tinulak nila yung mga anak nila pumunta sa barangay at magpalista.
Correct.
Natakot ang tao. Di siyempre, masaya ang lahat. Halos 1 milyon yung nakalista. Hindi nila alam kung saan nilalagay. No? Pero masaya si Duterte. Sabi niya, ganyan pala, pag tinakot mo, gagalaw. At dito sa mga nakaraan panahon, meron siya mga ibang tinatakot. No? At nakikita niyang gumagalaw. At meron siyang sasabihin, kung gusto niya, tumataas yung kanyang approval rating.
Survey.
Yung survey, sinabi niya sa droga, taas yung approval rating. Minura niya sila Ayala tsaka si Pangilinan, tumaas na naman ang approval rating niya nung minura niya. Wala naman siyang ginawa, pero tinakot niya. Tapos tuwing tatakutin niya itong mga tao, lalo na sa pag sinasabi niya sa oligarko o kaya dito sa bibigyan niya ng pera, magbumudbud siya sa mga barangay ng pera, tumataas ang approval rating niya. Pero importante yung pag meron siyang tinatakot. Ito na yung bakuna. Yung bakuna, sabi niya, pag hindi kayo magpapabakuna, papa-arestuhin ko kayo. Naghahanap ako ng batas para mapakulong ko kayo. No? At kung ayaw niyong magpabakuna, pwede kayong lumayas dito sa bansa. Dahil ang gusto nyo magpabakuna ng bakuna ng baboy. Yan ang salita niya. No? I-arestuhin niya, pipilit niya, tatakutin niya. At meron siya talagang natatakot. Pupunta na talaga, magpapabakuna na, baka ikulong. No? Meron ganyan talaga, madami yan. Kaya niyang takutin kasi ang taong bayan. Isipin niyong mabuti. Nung unang beses siya nanakot ng tao, ang tinakot niya, drug addicts, drug users, drug dealers. No? At 1 milyon ang agad-agad nagpalista sa barangay. Ngayon, sabi ko, yung pabakuna, ipipilit niyang pabakuna ang mga tao. Natatakot yung mga tao, ayaw pabakuna. Dahil may mga 10% chance, 15% chance na magkakaroon sila ng side effects at pwedeng mamatay. Pero alam niya yan. Pero pipilitin niya pa rin magpabakuna at tatakutin niya. Nakikita niyo ba ang kakaibahan doon sa first na tinakot niya yung tao, papatayin niya kung hindi sila magsusurrender sa mga droga. Ito naman kabila, tatakutin niya, ikukulong niya kung hindi sila magpapabakuna. Anong kakaiba nun? Doon sa una, pinipigil niyang gumamit ng droga. At papatayin niya pag magpupilitin gumamit ng droga. Dito sa pangalawa, pinipilit niyang pasukan ng droga. At ayaw ng tao dahil baka mamatay sila.
Tapos pinipilit niya.
Pinipilit niyang saksakan ng droga. Ano siya ngayon? Hindi ba siya ang drug lord ngayon? At dito, natatakot ang tao, baka mamatay sila. Sa droga, ayaw ko din ng droga. Pero sa droga, hindi kamatayan ang pagtitake ng shabu. Yung pag na-addict ka at nasisira, okay, nasisira nga. Pero hindi nila inihahambing sa pagkapatay unless mag-overdose ka. Ito, pwede kang mamatay. Tapos ang presidente ng bansa mo, ikukulong ka kung hindi ka magpapa-iniksyon. Sa iniksyon na pwede kang mamatay. Ano ba, Mr. President? Ikaw na ba ang naging number 1 drug lord sa Pilipinas? Dahil alam mo na itong itutulak mo at ipipilit mo sa mamamayan ay pwedeng pumatay ng tao. At kami, natatakot kami, baka patayin mo. Ano naman ang gagawin namin? Hindi ba nararapat pa ipagtanggol namin ang sarili namin? Ang pamilya namin? Hindi ba natural lang yon na ipagtanggol namin ang buhay namin? You're a bully, Mr. President. And your actuations towards this senator is one other example of your character. You're abusive of your authority. Alam mo yan. Alam mo yung ginagawa mong yan. Pero parang wala ka ng pakialam sa taong bayan. Ikaw na lang ang aming presidente. Nagdarasal kami na sana maliwanagan ka. Gamitin mo ang nalalabi mong mga panahon na gawin ang kinakailangan mong gawin para sa kapakanan ng taong bayan. Number 1, Article 12, Section 17 and 18. Ano po ito? You will declare a state of emergency and the public utilities in electricity, water, and telecom goes back to government, and you will institute a new level of collections much lower than what these oligarchs are charging the people.
Yep.
Up to 50 or 70% lower. Because our estimation is that the profits that they generate in charging the people the electricity rates is no less than 2/3 of the electricity rates. So that's number 1. Take over public utilities for the sake of our people and businesses that are now suffering. Number 2, withdraw all kinds of threats to arrest people who prefer not to be vaccinated. It is against the most basic of human rights. Number 3, promote all other medicines that are proven cures and treatment for the COVID-19. Yan mga ivermectin, yan mga hydroxychloroquine, itulak nyo at sabihin nyo sa tao, kung gusto nyo ito, pues kunin nyo. Kung nakakagaling sa inyo, pues gamitin ninyo. Dahil gusto ko magsalba ng buhay. Ayokong pumatay ng tao. And number 4, kung pwede, Mr. President, para mahinto na itong mga kalokohan ng politika, dito sa declaration mo of emergency, i-postpone mo ang elections. Bigyan mo ng pahinga ang tao sa politika at ayusin muna natin ang kanilang kabuhayan. tanggalin mo, habang nandyan, tanggalin mo yung COMELEC. Lahat ng mga inappoint mo dyan na galing sa Mindanao, iisa lang sa 7 ang hindi tiga Mindanao. Yung 6, 3 dyan tiga Davao. Bakit mo ginagawa yan, Mr. President? May tangka ka bang mandaya? Wala naman siguro. Well, tanggalin mo lahat yan. Abolish COMELEC if you can. And take out the Smartmatic.
Yep.
Ito lang 4 na ito siguro sa umpisa ang magagawa mo so that you can leave a good legacy to the people, so that you will be remembered as one of the best presidents that we ever had. Mr. President, we in the KDP appeal to you. Time is running out. You don't have too much time. You're going to give your SONA this month. We hope your SONA will be less of telling us what you supposedly had done for the country. Because we are sure to understand that during these last 2 years or so, many people have suffered and probably died because of your policies. Because you refuse to go against the oligarchic control of the public utilities. You refused even to bring down electricity rates by a single centavo because you are afraid to displease your friends, the oligarchs. We appeal to you, Mr. President. We're concerned about saving the nation. We are not politicians. I am not. But I can see what's going to happen to our country. And I'm worried for my children and my grandchildren. I know you're not worried about yours because they have a lot of money already. But our people will suffer. Millions will suffer if you refuse to do what is right for them and for the country. Yan po ang ating session for today. At salamat at nabigyan niyo po ako ng konting panahon para magbigay ng mensahe. No? Dahil ito nga ang panahon na ito ay napaka-importante na marinig natin ang kuminsan hindi natin kayang ibigkas, no? Dahil wala tayong pamamaraan, no? Pero ako'y naniniwala kung ano man ang sinasabi ko, marami pong sumasang-ayon at marami pong sumusuporta na makaabot man sa ating Pangulo. Ulit ko po sa inyo, hindi ako politiko and that is not my intention. No? Our intention is really to try to create a better life for the coming generations. Thank you.
And there you go. And that is our Independence Day message for today. Yun po. So it sort of, yun po yung summary sa atin. This is what we're fighting for po. A nation, a sovereign nation. And I think people should be aware of that a republic needs to be fought for every single year to maintain it and to keep it flourishing. So, yun po ang message ni Chairman. All right. So we will read our messages tonight again. doesn't reflect necessarily the opinions of us here at the KDP, but in the interest of free speech, we will try to read everybody's message. Starting with Marisa Niegos. Good evening po, Sir Itos Valdes and Sir Butch Valdes. Jeffrey Dizon. Blessed day, Sir Butch, Sir Itos. Watching always here from Taguig City, Philippines. I agree sa inyo, Sir Butch, yung nga, lagi comments ang ibang groups administration ni Duterte. Lagi silang sensitive sa mga opinions at suggestions ng ibang tao at grupo. Sana open-minded sila at positive at negative comments sa kanila po. Democratic nation naman tayo. Huwag sana lagi emotional at sensitive sa mga concerns at nagmamahal lagi sa Pinas at bayan. Correct. Virgie Ariola, gandang gabi po sa inyo. Ronald Tumbaga. Dito lang sa amin Residential Barangay West, Bahak, Olongapo City, may 4 na dekada ng largest immortal illegal blue jeepney terminal. Biyaheng Olongapo to Zambales. Pinakamaraming units at libong members at oldest transport cooperative sa Central Luzon. Since time immemorial, pero hanggang ngayon wala pa rin sariling terminal dito sa Olongapo. Audrey 21, paano Sir Butch, okay pa ba mag-deposit sa Paragon ngayon? What is Paragon? Not sure. Panahon? Paragon? Will you answer that? Roland Salvador. Okay.
Kung meron po kayong sa akin pong palagay lang, kung meron po kayong mga dinideposito sa bangko, ang i-deposit nyo po, yung talagang kakailanganin nyo lang sa mga darating na buwan, no? Maybe up to 6 months, depende hanggang kung gusto nyo up to 1 year. Pero yung iba pong mga naitatabi nyo, kung kaya nyo po, no? I-convert nyo na sa ibang asset, no? Sa negosyo o kaya sa lupa, no? Pwede niyong i-down payment yan sa lupa at dahil lang lupa, hindi po nawawala, no? Pero itong mga, ang pera nyo habang nandiyan po sa bangko ngayon, no? Ay bumababa ang halaga. Yung binibili po ng 1,000 ngayon at kukumpara nyo sa ibinibili ng 1,000 sa darating na panahon, makikita nyo po, mas konti yung darating na panahon. Ibig sabihin, bumababa ang halaga ng ating pera. Pero pag nasa tamang investment po yan, tulad ng lupa, no? O negosyo, dahil kaya nyong paikutin, no? Yun po ang mas mabuti sigurong ipasukan ninyo.
Okay. Roland Salvador, good evening po, Prof. Butch at Saritas from Abukay, Bataan. Joan Ondoy, good evening po mga boss, keep safe always. Ace Caliora, good evening Sir Butch at Saritas watching from Tagum City, Davao del Norte. God bless. Zane Arcilia, good evening Saritas, Sir Butch listening from Hong Kong. God bless you boss. Lourdes Culp, good evening Professor Butch and Saritas. Happy 4th of July, Independence Day po. U.S. royalty killed on 1776 Alexander the Great as the first king. The U.S. fight for freedom for British rule. Professor Butch, nanghihinayan po ako sa aking pagkawang gawa na nagyeyelong lugar noong panahon na namamahagi kami ng flyers para lang kay Duterte. Kala ko kasi para sa pagbabago ng ating bansa.
Marami pong ganyan eh.
Yeah. Sayang. Cesar Velasco, good evening po Sir Butch and Sir Ito. Salamat po sa mga totoong impormasyon na binabahagi niyo. Thank you. John Cyril Onato, good evening Sir Butch and people here in KDP. God bless and you always watching here from Capiz. Christopher Cruz, magandang gabi po sa lahat ng Katipons at Maharlikans. Amy Rima, watching from GMA Cavite. Susan Rosales, good evening mga idol. With my busy work at home, ako'y nakikinig at ang dami kong natututunan na hindi ko alam. Good evening, Gloria Siebert. Guten Abend, Sir Butch, Sir Itos, mabuhay po kayo. Always watching from Germany. Diba ang tawag sa July 4 is Philippine-American Friendship Day?
That's right.
Ngayon, yes. After nag-Independence Day, official natin is June 12, ginawang Friendship Day. Tama ba yun mga sir? Yes. Filemon De Vera, good evening Sir Butch and Sir Itos, watching from Muntinlupa City. Federico Mana, good evening po sa inyo, watching from Lipa. Bederio Candido Joselito, magandang gabi po sa inyo, Sir Butch. Mabuhay po kayo, watching from Riyadh, KSA. Inday Garcia Tindoy, watching from Taguig. Emma Mendoza, good PM po. Dati na po ako nakikinig sa inyo at sa DZXL 558 AM radio. Tapos nanonood ako ng refill kinabukasan. Ngayon lang po ako nanonood sa live broadcast nyo. Wow, thank you, Emma. Freddy Rodina, present. Cesar Soberano, good evening to the true Katipuneros, heroes of the KDP, always enlightened with the discussion of issues of national significance. Rog Almazor, good evening po, Sir Butch, Sir Itos, watching from Tanzac, Cavite, mabuhay ang KDP. Ava Kylie Ru, 13 family bloodlines of Illuminati, corporate Philippines na. Diyan nagkuha ng idea si Digong kay FDR sa Build. Daming naglalagay ng mga stock sa Lehman Brothers, then sinadyang nulugi ni Bush Jr. Doon nagkaroon ng financial crisis. Toby Rose, more power, Butch Valdes and Itos, watching from Canada. Ray Isagire, ang aksyon ni FDR para baliktarin ang mga ekonomiya bagsak papunta sa arrangement Keynesian economic system. Ang katotohanan, hindi maitulak ni FDR ang New Deal kung walang mass movement. Napilitan si FDR sa New Deal dahil sa dalawang socialist group at isang communist group at CIO alliance.
Alam niyo ba, baliktarin niyo po, siguro you need a little bit more briefing in your readings, no? Don't just read one source, no?
Right.
Kasi sometimes the oligarchs actually, no, have seen to it that other documents, other books were written that are going to be against FDR because they don't want another FDR to surface, no? Because why? Because FDR protects the people, protects the interests of the people.
Yeah.
Yung Keynesian, actually, he rejected Keynesian.
Right.
Keynesian was telling him, you can develop the United States by borrowing money from London.
Keys.
And he didn't want, FDR did not want the US to borrow from London because he said, pag humiram ako dyan, sisiguraduhin nila na hindi na ako makakabayad.
Yes.
When I borrow from them, they will make sure that I cannot pay.
Yes.
That's why he refused the Keynesian economic model. No? Instead, he used the American political economic model, wherein he generated credit, nag-emprenta siya, at he directed credit to the industries that need to be developed.
Right.
In other words, pinautang niya
Ang
gobyerno ang nagpautang dito sa mga industriya na gusto niyang matulungan at kinakailangan umunlad.
Yes.
Pinautang nila ang inemprenta dito sa mga bangko, etong mga bangko inutusan dito sa mga ganitong industriya mo lang. Kailangan ipahiram yan.
Right.
It's called directed credit.
Yeah.
No? You have to, I know, I've seen these kinds of books and I'm just a bit nagugulat that they create all of these stories that were not real.
Right. John Maynard Keynes was a British economist. He was put there to try and influence the direction, lalo na sa Bretton Woods, and how to craft it. Pero hindi po nakinig si FDR kay Keynes. So, pero ang nagpo-promote dyan, yung British Empire, gusto nila yung kanyang-ganyan speculative free trade. Yan ang kalaban na alam ni FDR, ni Franklin Roosevelt, kung sino itong mga to. So, let's palawakin natin ang pagbabasa. And FDR was not a socialist. He was not a communist. He was not a mass movement. That's the totally different paradigm na sinisiraan nila si FDR. Yun lang gusto sabihin. William Laguno, gandang gabi po, Sir Buseidas, at kasama natin dito sa Katipunan. Carlo EY, this is about the biggest crime yet. Yan, may link. Raz Latap Mendoza, good evening to both of you, father and son, Prof. Butch and Sir Itos. God bless. Very informative issues from outside and inside the country. Di ko naririnig mga to sa economic subject nun. Dapat ganito ang tinuturo sa mga school, how I wish.
How I wish.
Diba? Tama. Imagine if we had learned Alexander Hamilton and Franklin Roosevelt.
Sana po magkaroon tayo ng isang mahusay na presidente na makikinig na kailangan natin palitan ang curriculum po ng economics department ng mga universities. No?
Oh.
Kasi po nagkalat dyan itong mga klaseng ekonomista na akin tinatawag na econo-quacks. No? Kasi ang gusto nila free market at walang gagawin ng gobyerno para makatulong sa mamamayan. No? They call it laissez-faire.
Yes.
Walang gagawin at
Ang
let the
gobyerno.
weak ones fall by the wayside. Yan ang gusto ng mga ekonomista ngayon. Ako po hindi naniniwala sa ganyan. No? Importante po ang role ng government na protektahan ng mamamayan, suportahan ng mamamayan para makaunlad lahat. No?
Anyway. Morgan Clarito Jeffers, gandang gabi po. Nick Borromeo, Sir Ita, Sir Butch, good evening po sa inyo watching from Santa Rosa. Tama, Sir Butch, Philippine Commonwealth Army ay under ng US Army. Kaya entitled lahat ng ating World War II veterans sa benefits ng mga US veterans. Yes, that's what we were nga. Pero we illustrated, kwento po natin, when Truman took over, ginawa niyang condition. Kung gusto niyo, ito, kung ayaw, iba na yung usapan. Yolandal Ove, yung Madam Apple Basalio. Good evening mga sir. Hello Filipinos. Musta kayo mga friends? Happy Sunday. Benji Castro, good evening KDP. God bless po sa lahat na nandito watching from Alan. Raf XB, good evening Chairman Butch and Saritas. Good evening everyone. Mr. Valdes, am I correct to assume that we no longer have control of our own Banco Central? Same thing with most central banks in other nations.
Matagal na, Raf, no? The way the financial oligarchy, the international banking oligarchs, control economies is to control the central banks. No? And the central banking system is their way of controlling the rest of the world. The money movements of the rest of the world is done through the central banks. If you notice, the central bank does not answer to the Philippine government. You don't see the chairman of the central bank, the governor of the central bank being investigated by the Blue Ribbon Committee as to where he had deposited our reserves. No? Meron supposedly tayong reserves na $88 billion. Saan nakalagay yan? At sinong nagbigay ng utos na ilagay dyan? No? What authority did they have to put it in this investment or that investment? Because this money is not under the pillow of the central bank governor, di ba? Wala yan sa ilalim ng unan niya.
Yeah.
And that is somewhere in Wall Street or in some bank that's holding it and making use of our money. No?
Yep.
Ganyan yan, no? But you see, the central bank officers are not controlled by the national government.
Right.
And nakakatuwa, itong mga bobong mga mambabatas natin, nung minsan pinahayag ko sa kanila yan that you don't control the central bank. No? Nagulat sila, bakit hindi? No? Are you sure? Are you sure? Nagtatanong sila. Yes, I'm sure. Why don't you try it?
Yeah.
Why don't you call for a
Hearing.
no? And ask them, where is our reserves placed?
Where is it
Where did you
deposited?
put it?
Yeah.
No? Where is it deposited? What do you do with it? No? Because you cannot say we have $88 billion in reserves. Where is it?
Saan na napunta?
Yun ang yun na. At the central bank governors are not obligated to answer them.
Yeah.
Because the charter of the central bank makes it different. No?
Yes.
And they did it, our Philippine laws allowed them to do it, no? Because it was a requirement by the financial institutions and the IMF.
Right. So the same with your last statement. Same thing. The central banking system is not controlled by nations or countries. Min Festa, good evening, Prof. Butch and Son. Manaf. Good evening po mga sir at sa lahat ng mga viewers dito. God bless po sa ating lahat. Wilfredo Piñano, gandang gabi po magtatay. Kailangan wasakin na mga oligarko sa ating bayan at pakikialam ng CIA. Those are two different things. But yes, we get your point. Catalina Shirley Boringot Lim. Good evening po, watching your program now. Edna Imperial. Hello po, Sir Itos Valdes, Butch Valdes. Good evening everyone watching from Pasig City. Jerry Chua. Ang Amerika lang ba pwede mag-print ng dollars at walang backup na gold reserve? Trillions na utang okay lang sa kanila. Di pwede mag-depreciate.
Alam niyo po, sa Amerika, meron tinatawag na Federal Reserve. Yung Federal Reserve is like a central bank. But that is owned by other people. It is private individuals and corporations that own the Federal Reserve. Ang pera po ng Amerika ay kinukuha dito sa Federal Reserve. Umuutang sila sa Federal Reserve. Umuutang sila sa kanilang central bank. At yun ang ginagamit nila pampaandar ng kanilang ekonomiya. At nagbabayad sila ng interest dyan.
Right.
No? Ngayon, habang utang sila ng utang, palabas naman ng palabas ang Federal Reserve. Maski na hindi na backed up by anything.
Hindi na konektado.
Wala na. Basta emprenta lang ng emprenta dahil inuutang ng Amerika para sa kanilang stock market at lahat, no? At pababa ang halaga nitong pera nila. Di pwede mag-depreciate. Nagde-depreciate yan. Ang US dollar, it is depreciating very, very fast. But you know why it seems like it is not depreciating fast? Because other currencies like the Philippines and the rest of the world, no, are keeping the US dollar up by buying the US dollar in order to continue to trade. No? Because the international economy, international financial system is based on the US dollar. So the one that is propping up the United States is us. But when we prop it up, that means our own currency suffers. That means our own people suffer because of this system.
Yeah, this is the system that was imposed on the world. That's the system that must be broken, even for America. Ernie Ocampo, good evening Sir Itos Valdes and Butch Valdes. Mabuhay ang KDP, mabuhay ang Pilipinas. Arok Ale, good evening Sir Butch and Sir Itos. Now it's the other way around, sirs. The US is the one warring with nations, either to enslave them and take other nations' resources. Our veterans never received the pay because it was Truman who changed all what Roosevelt promised. Truman was a member of the deep state. Truman was following and was parang bata ng British oligarchy. So now we know as a deep state. But at that time, yung financial, yung banks, Truman yung tao nila. So yun ang ginamit nila. Arnold Arcillas, good evening po sa lahat ng KDP. Stephen Spielberg, mabuhay ang makapili. July 4, 2021. Rosia Mejias, good evening all watching from QC. Sailalin Miles, gandang gabi po sa lahat, Sir Butch at Sir Itos. Dora Vega, good evening Sir Itos and Sir Butch, mabuhay kayong magigiting na katipuneros. Don Mart, para bang ang deep state ay hindi na ginagamit ng assassination, bagkus ay ginagamit ng media sa pamamagitan ng mga black propaganda sa mga leader na nag-i-introduce ng pagbabago at pagmamanipula sa mga elections. All the ways they can do it, they will do. Angeline Leasing, good evening Sir Butch at Sir Itos, listening from Hong Kong, God bless you both. Ava Kylie Ru, kwentong kotsero but proven true daw na si Harry Truman ay nakiki-negotiate kay Joseph Stalin na isang secret operation of sharing weapons and technology. Ray Isagire, pagkatapos pumanaw si FDR 1945, unti-unti pinalobo ng Estado ang labor movement. Pagkatapos, pulbohin ng Estado labor movement, pumasok sila Cold War para magpatuloy ang armed production ng mga oligarch. Cold War, lalong lumala dahil sa expansionism ni Stalin. Kaya bumaligtad after FDR. Alam ng mga oligarch sa kanila hugutin ang pambayad. Annabel Casper, good evening po sa lahat. Ed Micalier, good evening. Mabuhay po kayo, Chairman Butch, Kaitos at sa lahat ng supporters KDP. God bless you more. Listening from Sampaloc, Manila. Alfredo Redina, kung dormant ang account mo sa bangko, may charge monthly till maubos ang cash balance.
Tama.
Ano nga? Which is baliktad daw. Federico Mana, mafia government ang system ng pamamahala sa atin. Kaya bangko ang unang aayusin sa quantum financial system. Kapag ma-implement na ang Nesara Gesara.
Tama.
Luchig Melchor, sana may batas ng barilin ng mga traitor ng bayan. Kalungkot po talaga. Sana magising ang mga marami. Betchay, sinungaling nga po, depende sa ikababango ng pangalan niya. Magsasalita siya para ikababango ng pangalan niya. Pero sa ibang magsalita, hindi pwedeng tigilan nyo. Sinasabi niya, sila ang paniwalaan.
Tingnan nyo,
sinasabi niya. Tignan nyo, sinabi niya, sila lang paniwalaan. WTF. Marami pa rin nauuto kay Tico. Meron pa ba? Okay.
Inubos niya na. O, meron pa yan eh. Okay. Pangalan po ng ating mga katipon dito sa ating katipunan at sa mga galing na staff ng DCXL Radio Mo Nationwide. Kami po ay pansamantala nagpapaalam at nagpapasalamat na sinuman niyo kami ngayon ang mura ng peligro ng ating bayan at ng buong mundo. Dito po sa ating katipunan. Hanggang sa linggo po muli mga katipon, 7 to 9 p.m. Magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat.